Okay, so this is video 3 in the Terminal Monopoly development guide. Um, this is not part of the 0 to 60 guide. That's supposed to be very quick and easy for you to just reference if you have any issues while working on it with GitHub specifically, and really just open source project workflow. But in Terminal Monopoly, or rather for the rest of these videos, they're going to be about Terminal Monopoly as an independent project of its own. And so in this video, we are going to work through an issue, and I'm going to show you how I would solve it, how I'd approach it, just when I read through the issue page, and really get an idea of maybe some best practices along the way, especially best practices regarding terminal monopoly, because I can talk on those more so than I can talk about generic programming best practices. So looking through the issues, like you saw in the first video anyway, when you're looking through issues, you want to find one that that hasn't been taken by someone. Although, to be fair, if you look at some of these issues and it was opened a while ago and it hasn't been updated for a while, maybe that issue's going to be reopened soon, or you can just comment on it and I might just give it to you anyway. This is more so for the people at Casual Coding. Technically, open source projects are open source, and so anyone can contribute to any issue that they want to, and then it's up to the maintainer, me or anyone else I choose to be maintainer, to just take that code and accept it. But in Casual Coding, I try to make it such that if one person that I know chooses an issue, then I'm not going to take anyone else's PRs related to it, unless they take ages. Then it's different. Anyway, in this video, we're going to do the deed viewing in terminal mode. So you choose an issue. You're going to read through it. Let's see what this is talking about. Most of the code for viewing deeds has already been written, but it was written in monopoly.py. We need to be able to view deeds outside of the game board. Thus, there needs to be a deed module. When it says outside of the game board, it means in the terminals screen. This can be really fancy and should be well written, such that a programmer later on can add additional information to it. For example, when attack effects are added, that would need to be available to view if someone clicks on a deed. For now, you, the programmer, are responsible for reviewing and understanding the code in monopoly.py. It tells you where to find that. Use to view deeds. Recreate a deed viewer as a module, so essentially taking that code in monopoly.py, update status specifically, and making that into a module, so it might take some formatting differences, which are then described in the next bullet point. All the data in the module should adhere to typical module rules of 75 by 20 characters output. And then it gives some other information when you're making a module. Right. So what is this issue asking? Well, it gives us a couple places to start. I mean, just starting at that first bullet point. Reviewing and understanding the code in monopoly.py. So let's pull up monopoly.py and see what's going on. I already have it open. This is the PRs, so I want to actually switch to my, I would like to switch to my development workspace. You guys don't necessarily have, or you don't necessarily need different workspaces. I just have one for PRs because that makes it a little easier to work with. So I don't have to worry about the two conflicting with my actual development branch. All right, so let's see. Let's check what branch we're on. We're on main, so I'm going to do, just to be sure, let's git pull, make sure we're up to date on main. Looks like we weren't, so it added some stuff. That's good. That's always good. Good to be up to date. Now we're going to go to git checkout dev. Now we're on our development branch. And just so we're up to date with development as well, let's do a git rebase main. All right, cool. So all that did in our source control, now you'll see our development branch is up to date with origin main and our origin head. So all of our branches are on the same level. And you can see there was some recent stuff added. I actually didn't see where we were before, but if you wanted to review that, you could check out the different commits. Okay, so we're on dev. And what we wanted to look for from our issue was monopoly.py update status. So going to monopoly.py. I'm going to do Control F, update status. And if I control and click, it actually takes me to the function definition. That's helpful. You could also just Control F until you find it. And we got this, excuse me, we got this function here. This is a bad description. That'll need to be changed. But it looks like it's clearing some status, which is a list. All right. And then depending on the update type, it's going to do one thing. It looks like it's going to be listing the properties of a player. That seems to make sense. And then if update equals deed, and then it asks what property you want to view. Okay, so this is the code we want to look for. We're looking through deed. And then it looks like it's just appending a bunch of information. This makes sense if we look through the strings. I mean, purchase price, price per house. This is just the information regarding that specific deed. So this kind of makes sense. And then we keep going, accept value error, in case maybe they enter the wrong number or they put in the wrong kind of data. Sure. In fact, it looks like we're demanding that they put in a specific type of location. Otherwise, we actually manually raise that value error, which is being caught here. That's cool. And then if mode equals banker, return get game board, same kind of stuff. So if mode equals banker is, that's something for the game board screen that we're not too concerned about at the moment. But it looks like this is the deed viewing function. And it doesn't look that complicated. A lot of it just looks repetitive. It couldn't really be simplified, as you can tell, because it has like different strings. So this shouldn't be too hard to implement in the terminal screen. Let's make sure we know what it's doing, though, in the actual output. So I'm going to go ahead and open myself a command prompt. And then, again, I have specific profiles for this. I'm going to pull up TM testing. Looks a little different, but it's fine. Do Python monopoly.py. I think this should run. Yeah. All right, so this is what we wanted. Roll dice. Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll buy it, sure. All right, so deed viewing. Deed viewing happens in update status. And what you would do here is you'd try to find when this is actually being called now in the input. So if I right click on update status and I do maybe go to references, it gives me all of these. And housing logic is updating status with properties. Mortgage logic, doing the same thing. Sell logic, same thing. Going down here, we have player choice. And you'll notice player choice, E to end turn, B to manage properties, D to view deed. That's this right here. Cool. So this is what we're talking about. So update status in this player choice thing. And if choice equals D, then it's going to use update status, which is viewing deed. Yeah, that's what we wanted. So we're going to press D. And then it asks what property to view, enter property number. Let's say we want to view 24, which is what, Illinois Avenue? Illinois Avenue. It appears right here. Great. So that is what update status is doing, at least in the case of deed viewing. So now we know what update status is doing. So in fact, we could probably like add some more detail here, saying like updates the status text box with the player's properties and the deed of the property. Yeah, ChatGPT is helping out here a little, or rather Copilot's helping out. And I do use Copilot to help with function comments especially. Actually, this is a good time to talk about Copilot in general. Should you be using it for programming? And shouldn't you? And should you be using for Terminal Monopoly? Obviously, I don't have an issue with you using it for Terminal Monopoly. What I do have an issue with is you not understanding what you're writing in code. So if you just give me a bunch of Copilot, ChatGPT slop, and you can't explain what it's doing, I don't want to have to learn it on my own. Or rather, I mean, I probably will know what it's doing if it's in basic Python, but you're not learning anything and you're not accomplishing anything contributing to this project if it's just Copilot or ChatGPT doing it all for you. I don't mind you using it. It'll make you a much faster programmer if you know what you're doing, because you'll be able to very quickly verify whether what it added to your code base or not, whether that's useful code. You'll be able to figure that out like that. And so I do use Copilot very frequently, but I also know what it's doing. I don't think there's a single line of code here that I can't explain. No, there isn't. There isn't. It might take me a little bit because it's a bit lengthy, but you should be able to explain the code that you write. And through your comments, you should be able to explain to other programmers briefly what you're writing. That's one thing that this code base needs a lot more of, is comments. But yeah. All right, anyway, so updates the status text box with the player's properties, or the deed of a property. That's more accurate. All right, so cool. We got the deed here. This is what we're trying to implement, this text output, into the terminal screen. So I'm going to actually break this and then go Python player.py. I'm going to add debug because I'm not interested in having any networking commands. And then does deed do anything right now? No, it doesn't. But you'll notice it didn't give us incorrect command, like if we put like read, which doesn't exist. It gave us something else. So if we actually go to player and we search up, or actually it's right here, else if standard input starts with deed, we already have this case. So now we just need to finish the rest of it. And again, what we're trying to update with is that monopoly deed output that we saw a minute ago. So this won't be that bad. Yeah, so, I mean, just naively approaching this, what if I just take all this and, I don't know, copy it? I wouldn't be explaining everything I'm doing during a normal coding session, but we're just gonna work with stuff. Real quick, let's just check that our bullet points make sense. So we reviewed the code. That's good. Real quick, I'm gonna assign this to myself because I'm doing it. All right, so we reviewed it and we kind of know what's going on. Recreate deed viewer as a module. Okay, so before I copy and paste stuff directly into player.py, like that, it asks us to recreate deed viewer as a module. The module should be called dviewer.py and should be saved within modules directory. So I'm not going to copy and paste and put it right here. Instead, I'm going to create a file like it says, deed viewer, and we're going to put it in modules directory. Yep, move it. And real quick, wow. I'm going to paste that code here as a comment because I'm probably going to use it. At least I'm going to use something like it. Now I don't have to switch back to like monopoly.python to see it. So we'll leave that right there. And then, so where you can regularly be testing this in player.py, I'm going to, or rather in modules.py, because modules directly interfaces with player.py, I'm going to create a function here called def. I'll just call it deed, actually. And displays the deed for the current location. I like the description it gave us, but I don't like the actual code, so we're going to delete that. Again, it's okay to use Copilot if you know what you're doing. And then, yeah, so we'll leave this description for now. We'll leave this description for now. We'll probably have to change it later because it's not that great. So we wrote our function. We're going to use this, and then in player.py, we're going to use m.deed. Or rather, we'll probably do something like, wow, okay, let me get rid of this pass. We'll probably do something like screen space dot, or no, active terminal dot update with deed. All right, so what we're doing here, and you'll see like in a bunch of these things, we're using, wow, how does this still exist? Okay, sorry. Sorry. In a lot of these, we do stuff like active terminal update, and we pass in the data that we're trying to, or the string list that we're trying to do. And so in this case, I'm going to pass in m.deed. So we'd expect deed to return a string list. Something like that of the deed. Yeah. I'll reformat all this when I'm not live coding. But yeah, okay, so it's string. String with new lines. Yeah, that's fine for now. And again, just naively, we're going to use these same things, rent with one house. And I say naive because we probably want to make it more pretty and fancy, like the like the issue said, but for now, let's just get text on the screen. Okay. So now if standard input starts with deed, like it did here, it's gonna actually do something. It's gonna try to update the active terminal with the output from m.deed. What does m.deed do? It does nothing right now. But reading through list properties, or excuse me, let's go back to the issue because I'll explain why I'm looking at list properties. The end of the issue says review other modules, for example, calculator, shop, and list command in player.py to see how programmers have written such modules that work well. I look at list properties because list properties also returns a string. In fact, it lists all properties on the board by calling the prop. Actually, yeah, this is correct. But what list property is doing is it's getting the properties. In this case, it's getting it from graphics, the key properties. So what is graphics properties? Well, it's going to be in our ASCII art, and it's going to be called properties right here. So it looks like this, okay? And then it's centering each of them with spaces along with a new line. And first word, I mean, there's some stuff going on here that you don't really have to worry about, but essentially what it's doing is it's creating a list, or not, excuse me, not a list. It's creating a large string with new lines at the end of it, and that's its retval. You'll see retval a lot throughout the code base. It just, excuse me, throughout the code base. It just means return value, and in this case, it's string. So let's use the same kind of stuff here. Retval equals empty string. At the very end, we're going to return retval. Why is it nice to have this kind of structure? Because if we were to actually try running it in Terminal Monopoly, then it would work. It just wouldn't do anything. But like, yeah, so if I did deed, it doesn't do anything because there's no return data. But like help and then deed, doesn't do anything, which is fine. But if retval was this, I believe that would do something. Deed. Or hang on. What's the issue? If standard input, if standard input is greater than 4, because it's expecting you to give a deed number, we'll remove that for now. Then run debug deed, or excuse me, deed, and look, it outputted our stuff. So now we actually have output, and for now, we're gonna leave it like that. In modules, we could, in theory, write all the stuff that we want deed to do, but the issue asked us to create a file, so we're gonna create a file. All right. Yeah, so let's do def get, actually, hang on, it gave us something. Deed viewer location players. This function takes in a location object and a list of player objects. Okay, I like this description, and I think I like the function name deed viewer as well. And then let's do that. Let's keep this all commented out. Or better yet, yeah, so what Copilot's trying to do, I mean, you should know this by now, but what Copilot does is it reads through your entire file or a large section of your file and tries to map code based on that. So what it did is it took location and player, where location is, in this case, I think it's an actual property object. Yeah, a property object from the class properties. That could be okay. We might actually use that. I was probably just going to use an integer and then return the data based on that, but let's use a property object, and we'll figure out how to pass it later on. I'm conflicted here only because, excuse me, only because you have to initialize all these properties. I'm trying to find the code which does that. Right, because initialize here for the property object, it sets all this data. Does it happen in Monopoly though? If we control F for property with a capital P, and we do want it to, well, we do want it to match the case. Let's do, no, that's not right. match case. Properties, import property. So I'm searching to find where all the property objects are initialized. It could be that. Interesting. It could be that they're not formally initialized. All right, I'll be right back. Hang on. Okay, so they initialize all the properties here in the board class. So the reason I have any sort of conflict right now in using property as a property or location as a property object in DeedViewer is I have to ask myself, am I going to be passing a property object which is found in board.py to DeedViewer, or am I going to pass it to because DeedViewer is in player? Am I going to pass it to banker? Am I going to pass it to player? It might be a bit of a hassle. And these are things you have to consider because we don't want to give player anything more than they need to know, right? Player doesn't get the entire game board. It just gets a string output of the game board. That is, the game board is all stored on banker. For the most part, everything is stored on banker. This is an important consideration. And again, I'll get more into this in the design philosophy videos. But for now, for the sake of like not using information that we aren't sure is being passed to player, we're just going to take a location as an integer. And then players is not, no, we're not going to use players right now. See, that's the issue with the Copilot. It's trying to map all this code from here, and we aren't actually sure we want to use all that code. And it's not a location object. It's going to be a location integer. Integer representing the location index. All right, so now if location owner, we're not interested in the owner right now. I mean, we will be, but let's just build a really basic output before we start doing the more complicated stuff. Right, so let's do retval equals empty string, and then it's gonna assume we can assume that you pass in a proper location value. So we're not going to do if statements checking the actual location. We'll just go ahead and add let's just add basic information right now. Yeah. Shoot, actually a property location, property class is very helpful here. So, I mean, let's use it. I mean, we can definitely, you can import property into DeedViewer. There's no issue with that. So let's import, import property. Is it properties? Where are you getting that? Yeah, import properties. From properties, import property. Yeah. And then we'll take in a int location. Is that going to work? Or better yet, board has all this information. Okay. So this is very much like a live coding session. I'm figuring it out with you. Here's what I'm thinking now. player. Again, we're trying to minimize the amount of data sent from player and to player. All right. So here's what'll happen. Oh, hey. Here in the terminal screen, player will send a property ID that they want to see information of. That makes sense. That's all they send. Now, we're going to go active terminal update m.deed. M.deed is going to take that location int, and it is going to pass that location int, or rather, it's going to get the index using location of board class's property, because locations here in board is mapped by key value. It's a dictionary key value where the key is just the index of the property. That works out fine. All right, and then, well, so the question is, where is board stored, right? Does Banker have direct access to board? Not right now, but we'll probably add it so Banker does have access to the board. Or he'll get it from Monopoly, MPLY, and that's totally doable. Let's see. Because also Monopoly game, this object during runtime has a board object. Yeah, it does. Start game has the board object. And it returns output, which is fine, but we know it has access to that board object. So I bet if I did something like in Banker, if I find my Monopoly object, Monopoly, maybe object, or what did I call it? Monopoly game does this. Monopoly game is the main game loop for Monopoly. MPLY is the module. Let's see. Here's game. Yes, game, start game. But that's just returning the string output. We want to get the board of the module at that point. So if we did MPLY, not in game rules, but rather in our get input right here, we got there's a get game board which returns a string. So we're going to want to do something very similar, right? If data equals request deed, easy, then we'll do pretty much the same thing. Net send message, but get deed. And yeah, okay, so what's happening here? And we have to implement get deed. We'll do that in a minute. But from deed viewer, okay, sorry, I'm clicking all over the place. Okay, so player m.deed. M.deed is going to send a message to Banker. So it's going to use, how do we normally do this? Get me out of calculator. List properties, TTT handler. Yeah, net send message. So we need a server socket. We have active terminal. We have player ID. Yeah, so we're going to need both our preface information. So the server is a socket, and player ID is an int. We need player ID because we always preface our message to the server with our ID. That helps things down the line. Send the server the location to get the deed for it. Correct. Send message. Good. And then wait for the server to send back the deed. Game data is great. Okay. Now, what is the deed that we are sending? One deed location. In Banker, we are getting back get deed, but we don't want to get a string from MPLY, the Monopoly module. We don't really want to construct it because that's not relevant to Monopoly. What I mean is we don't need to construct a function here that returns it so it looks pretty here. We can do all that constructing in deed viewer because there might be additional information in deed viewer that we need to pass along, which is also why passing it through Banker Makes sense because here we can get deed. In fact, let's do that right here. Property equals property data equals MPLY get deed. And then if we needed to append property data here, we could do so. All right. So now we're going to actually write out that get deed function. Get deed, it needs to pass in an integer. The integer is going to be, starts with deed. Oh my gosh, deed. Right, if the data starts with deed, because player is sending standard input starts with deed, active terminal, m.deed, and then m.deed sends player ID, deed, comma, location. So comma is the split. Data.split at comma CMD equals data split comma. I'm taking the data passed in, splitting it at a comma, and then we're going to do commands of 1 because modules sends deed is going to be your first amount of information, and then the actual integer location is that second piece. While we're at it, may as well convert that to an int. Okay, let's write get deed in NPLY monopoly.py. Let's find a place to write it. Right up here we have get game board, so it makes sense to have it near there because it's being used in the banker. So we can do def get deed, and it's going to return not a string, but rather property. Boom. And it's probably going to fill it out pretty good. Get deed rather with an int, or sorry, location int, and let Copilot do it. Yeah, there we go. Because board has a locations dictionary, and that's exactly what we were talking about earlier. All right, and it's returning that. So now out of MPLY, we got banker. It's going to get the deed, or it's going to try to get the deed. It gets property data, and then we could format it here, or we could format it in deed viewer. Low key, the way things are looking, we probably want to format it in deed viewer. We have a couple options here. One is unimplemented right now. That is, we haven't added a way to pass objects from one socket to another socket. That is, you can't actually pass a property object from client to player. Now that's not necessarily an issue because we've only been passing strings for the entirety of this project. But we probably do want to start passing objects, especially once we do stocks module. And even right here, it seems that we do need to pass a property object, unless we were to format all that property data on our side right here. So, excuse me. So the question is, do we do that here? With a lot of things, I mean, yeah, with a lot of things we haven't needed to. So for the sake of being consistent, we won't. Yeah. Instead of having this deedviewer.py, in properties, here it is, properties, let's just make a print deed function here. Because it's relevant to properties to have a print deed function. Def print deed. And we could, in theory, use this in the get status method as well. So yeah, this function prints the deed for the current location. Is this what we want from Copilot? Oh, it's gone. Set cursor string at 0, 0, get D 33, 33, X is 33, Y is 3. Deed viewer. It could be good, but these positions are kind of whack. And what is s.getD? Does that exist anymore? Let's make sure. There is no, oh wait, style, module style.getD. Style doesn't have a dot. This doesn't make sense. So we're going to get rid of that. And as a matter of fact, print deed, it does, if it's going to use self, then it does need to be within the property class. So we'll just indent that one more time. Now it's within property class. Print deed. And S is style for set cursor string. We can use that. Sure, let's try it. Print deed, it's going to need this self parameter, so it can use the self stuff. All right. Yeah, this is kind of sketch, but let's see how it goes. Banker get deed is property data. Yep. And then it's going to print deed. We actually don't want it to print. We want to print as a string. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT or Copilot to change all these print statements. Change print statements to append to a string with new lines. Remove s.set cursor string. This is a very good use of Copilot because it's literally just an efficiency thing. Cool. Deed string is boom, 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 boom. This is exactly what we wanted. Maybe this is gonna work. And to be clear, let's call it something like get deed string. That makes sense. Okay. So in Banker, we did get deed, and this returns a property object. So now we have property data. Let's send get deed. Property data is a property. So if we do property data dot get deed string, this is a valid thing that we can send to player. Yeah. So this is kind of crazy. I'm not 100% sure if this is going to work. So we're going to test it. But everything should be linked up, and we can review one more time. Oh, let's real quick. Let's make sure we paste that into our terminal. Return deed data. Return it because it's being called from here, and it's trying to update your terminal with that. Excuse me. All right, let's give it a shot. We are going to need Banker here, so we're going to do Python player.py. Not with any arguments because we do want to host the game, so we'll press B. It pops up here. Good. Tries to auto scale. Looks good for me. And we do want to start the Monopoly game. This is important because we're doing stuff with deeds. So let's see if this works. Let's try unit test 2. I'm going to need to create a second player. Let's try port 5000. And it's got my IP ready. I'll do Adam. IP, not 3131, but rather 5000. Connect. Got first connection. So now we'll pull up a second terminal. I'm just going to pull it out like that. Python player, player.py. Going to join. We'll call second player 2, paste IP, and 5000. Connect. Looks like good. It says about to start Monopoly game. Press enter to continue. Ooh. All right, there's that. And then here, press enter to continue. Looks like everything's connected. All right, good. So now, moment of truth. Let's see how if it breaks. If I do deed, deed 39 should be boardwalk. All right, so missing, yeah, it definitely is missing those arguments. So let's fix that. On line 326 and get input, it's missing server, player ID, and location. This is an easy fix because deed needs server, player ID, and location. Server is going to be sockets of, how do I do it before? In our net commands right here, we do sockets of 1 to send a message. Player ID and active terminal. That's all that we want. Great. So now we're probably going to need to run it again. Sorry, guys. We'll break that, and then it should disappear there. Player.py. Boom. Actually, out of curiosity, let's try it without starting the Monopoly game. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but it might work. And I didn't mean to do that. Dang it. All right. Start with banker. Banker, and we want to go 4. Port 3131 is fine. Adam. Thank you. Thank you. Very cool. Okay, well, it's still going here, so maybe I can just run it anyway. Adam. It's connected. Let's try D39 here. Invalid literal, where the literal isn't empty because deed was missing server, player ID, and location. Did I not save it? Am I trolling? I might be trolling. My bad, chat. Okay. Save. Let's try it again. Python player.py. Host the game. Enter 4 3131. Adam. Paste 3131. Enter. Connect. Deed 39. Okay. Now something else happened, but we don't know because banker crashed and then disappeared. So let's open banker separately and then do Python banker.py. We'll host a game like this because we need to see what banker is crashing about. Why is it crashing out? And we'll connect with player as per usual. We could use our debug arguments here because we know exactly where we're connecting, but it's okay. But let's see what is crashing banker. So deed 39 crashes, but right here, monopoly.getDeed int, invalid literal for int, and it's passing in a terminal object. Ooh, that's kind of funny because we passed in terminal before we passed in player ID. So it should go server, socket, player ID, and then location. Yeah. So we want it to be standard input. 6 maybe? 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, yeah, so index equals standard input dot find that, and then all right, do some error handling. Yep. Put of index +1 to the end. Yeah, that should do it. Because what we were doing is we were passing in to deed in modules the server, which is correct, the player ID, which is correct. Then we pass in terminal object, which was incorrect. Let's run it up. If I don't get it, for the sake of time, probably gonna end this video. But this is basically the process of how to work on those modules. Hope this made a little bit of sense. deed, and keep it simple. Deed 5. Look at that! Deed viewer. Oh my gosh. Owner is -1. And it looks like, I mean, some things are a little bit messed up, but this is good. This is what we wanted to get. Yeah, a lot going on here. Review the video. Make sure it makes sense what I'm doing. Because this is like a really quick crash course on the networking, different modules, and also just like workflow, how I got from one place to another to know what I needed to do here. But yeah, that's good. I'm gonna polish this and finish it, but when I do finish, actually, I have an idea for the next video that'll make this pretty straightforward. Yeah, so this is the deed viewer issue. Not exactly solved, but this is the process for how you solve it. And checking the time, I mean, 45 minutes to finish an issue. Not too bad. Another 15 minutes without me live commentating, probably could have finished it. Cool. Yeah. So I hope this made sense. As always, you guys can reach out to my Discord if you have any questions. And if this video doesn't make sense, don't leave a like, I guess.